Damon said it was keep your thumb up until I hit record, but I mean, as long as, you know.
Oh, I
Wait,
see.
we're recording now. Is everybody Fonzies? Everybody's Fonzies with the recording? Okay.
Okay. But Jorge, are you okay with me recapping? Are you sure? Okay. Well, what I understood you to say, Jorge, was that the VCI has made a decision that everybody is all the small groups, all these what are they called again? Working groups. They're going to be run by sociocracy. Is that correct?
Well, not decided. Like the aim is to have everybody exposed to the necessity of having a governance that unites all the efforts. So the idea would be to invite a representative or as many people of each study group into that meeting of the VCI, so they can see it running, and then like say, yeah, like this would be great to have all spread out in all the groups, but not like to say we decided already that the governance is going to be this. Like if there's another model, or everybody gets that it can integrate other things, then maybe run the consent circle right there. And since all the representatives are present, then yes, it would be decided to implement.
I guess that was more of a question than a statement. And I'm just hearing that we don't want to make a decision about a regular time until we've done until we have decided a time where the key members can all be present, the key members of this working group can all be present in order to decide what is your mission, your vision and your mission. And so that regular time cannot really be decided now. We can decide we need to be making a decision for that meeting. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So the VMA session, like that work group, would establish the frequency of the meetings. The VMA vision, mission, and aims. And once that's done, then the next thing would be to create our culture, which goes from very basic things like the thumbs up when we're ready to record, stuff like that, no? Maybe the way we talk to each other, which would bring the nonviolent communication aspect. That's part also of the culture. And everybody gets to make a list of all these questions, like how do we want to make these spaces safe and fun for everybody, and productive and effective, you know? So all these questions are gathered, and then they're ranked, then they're synthesized, and finally they decided on. And that creates the culture of each group, which maybe have little differences, but all together they need to look kind of like the same from each other amongst all the groups and with the VCI. So it would be a great exercise to form these BMAs and cultures on each group and then gather them all together into the main one. I mean, the VCI. The VCI is not the main. It's like the circle that includes all other circles. Basically, that's a way to see the VCI, no?
It was described as a steering committee, right? Is that a fair description of it?
Yeah, like the idea is not to making like the central intelligence agency, you know, like when all the information is centralized. Yeah, it's more like, okay, it's like where the representative of each study group or task force goes and report and get some sort of like the communication spread evenly and all the voices are heard and considered, and that's the way to have collective consent decisions. Yeah.
So as for the good times to meet, we had suggested that I perform a doodle that polls the participants, the people that have signed up for the parenting and education study group, the ones that haven't engaged with the Basecamp yet, but have signed up for the group. And this is an opportunity to let them know that the groups are meeting now, and they're missing out. I'll be able to attach this recording as well, so they can see what has gone before. And that will give us a profile of preferred times, and we can see how well it fits with our recurring time right now, which is Friday evenings, whether that is something that we can continue and whether it's something that we want to do bi-weekly or weekly or monthly, or if it's good to mix it up and we could see that there's a large demographic of people that want it on the morning early in the week and then another group that wants it later in the week, later in the evening, then we can have multiple meetings that people can participate and have their ideas shared, and hopefully there'll be times where we'll be able to all get together, of course, but this is a collection of volunteers, so finding tenable times to meet is really important.
Would
Yes,
it fit-
correct.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jorge.
I just said yes, correct.
Okay. Okay. Does it fit within this to say, like with the sociocracy, to say, okay, so that's what we want to do, and Ray's going to try to work on that with this specific group. But in the meantime, would it make sense and fit within doing this, if that's what's decided that we want to do, whenever that's decided, to say, just in case, shall we go ahead and schedule our next meeting when works for all of you here, so that we don't wait on, forever to hear back from everyone, and then we just don't meet for months and months. You know what I mean? Would it fit everything to do that? Like, go ahead and schedule maybe the next one, and then if we hear back like that people want to meet 3 weeks from now, we schedule 2 weeks from now, then we cancel the 2 week and we meet in 3 weeks. Does that work? Or
Yeah, that works perfect. Like sociocracy works when everybody is on board. In the meantime, it's not like a barrier to make decisions. So what you're saying is completely making sense to me. And another thing is that most of the work in sociocracy is not done at the meeting. Like, people get a chance to participate by knowing what are the actions prior to the next meeting, and they know the agenda, so they can participate by filling up whatever file we create for that purpose. And then they say, okay, I sent it, I put my name on it, so they are actually participating, even in the case they can't make it to the meeting. But the best case scenario is for a starting group to get together, no? I think it's common sense for all of us. Like, we're on the same page, and I love to see that.
What's the culture of how you speak? How do I know when I can speak? Do I raise my hand?
Well, I don't find like a right culture, but some people say to write your name on the chat when you want to speak, like write your name, no? Like, another one is to raise your hand, I guess. But all of this is a good question. Like, what is the culture for that? Yeah.
Patricia, are you familiar with using the Zoom now, and you know where the chat is on the bottom and everything?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was I gonna say? I can't remember, but okay, so then in the meantime, when would we like to meet next? Although we know it might be canceled and made at a later date if we hear back from more people who want to join us and it works with all of us and more people.
Well, if you're asking a question, I mean, I'm not wanting to bring up a new topic, but if are you saying that anytime I want to speak, I need to put my name in the chat? Jorge?
No, not right now. I'm just saying, like, if I get on and on and on and on, and you want to speak, then I figured out that what I've seen in other meetings is that people write their name on the chat, or they hold their hand up. But it needs to be consensus also, because sometimes this can be mistaken. Yeah, so it needs. Yeah,
that's enough out of you. That's enough out of you.
Oh yeah. Oh dear. I'm sorry if I gave that impression at all. I was trying to be an obedient, like, I'm raising my hand. Can I talk now? Okay. Well, I was just like that. My suggestion would be, I know you're trying to answer a simple question. Maybe we should do some laughter yoga right now. No. But it's like, it seems to me like the doodle should only would be best only to go to the people who have been regular participants, because what I'm seeing is that you have created you've gotten to know each other. Maybe there's regulars. You said, you knew the people who did not show up tonight. So what that's telling me is that you have a group that is serious. And so it would be best to say, we are the decision makers. Nobody has shown up. We've all proven to each other we're willing to invest the time. And we have to, in sociocracy, that is one of the key principles, is that who's in the circle. So there's some circles that are business meetings, and we are making decisions by consent. And if somebody's not here, we need to check in with them. But and then these other people who you want to get involved, you have more like, we're having a meeting and we're going to learn nonviolent communication, or we're going to teach, we're going to have a speaker on unschooling. And if you want to be part of our business meeting circle, because it seems like I'm seeing a structure where each one of the working groups has a steering committee, and then you've got people who are just interested. And the mission is usually called is what I've heard it called, the mission circle. So I sure hope that all this talking is relevant. It just seems like that is what working groups need to do. If they don't get these, anyway, I don't want to okay, I'm done.
There are 45 people that have identified with this project. A lot of the names are in India too. I signed them up, a lot of people, after Sailesh's tour of India. So we have set these times for the meeting. So I'm not sure if that's fair to say, sorry folks, if you didn't show up at 3 o'clock in the morning for our meeting, that your say is now irrelevant. We should at least, this is kind of drawing attention to stuff that I should have done a long time ago, before our first meetings. So that doodle is, I think, long overdue. We should try it at least once to get people's attention, and then if they still persist in radio silence, then we just continue as you suggested.
Yeah, the people in India, I don't know. I can't remember which way I posted the question about when, and I can't remember if that was in the campfire or on the message board, but either way, if they had their notifications turned off, then they may have never seen that yet anyway. So yeah, okay. And Patricia, that makes sense what you're saying too, yeah. But now if we add in all the people in India, and if their things are turned off, that'd be worth a try, I think, at least once. But so for the next one, just in case, next week, the next week,
I have a proposal for that. Benjamin and I happen to not be available this coming Friday in 1 week, so I propose in 2 Fridays.
That would be keeping pace, because it was 2 Fridays ago that we met.
Yeah, and that way maybe things about the governance meeting would happen on the Tuesday meeting. So that would give like a chance to regroup and organize that.
And Jorge and Ray and Patricia, does 2 Fridays from now at the same time work for all of you?
Yep, works for me.
And Sylvia?
The 31st. Okay. That would be the 7th meeting, right? Okay.
So, and Sylvie and Patricia, everybody, that works pretty well? Okay. Patricia, yeah, okay. All right, the 31st. All right, and then how long do we want to have a time, like kind of a time limit? And just for anyone who wasn't here, which I think was just Patricia for the last time, I think we were, as Jorge put it at the end so wonderfully, we were co-creating our vegan world with parenting and education for 3.5 hours. So that we just kind of had so much to talk about and everybody was excited. And I don't know if we want to do that every time or if we want to try to stick more to a time frame, because I could see how some people could come, and if we talk for 3 hours, then at the next meeting they might be like, I don't have 3 hours, but I can do that tonight, or today, wherever you are, you know, I don't have 3 hours, so I'm just not going to go. Or if we want to try to stick with more of a, you know, like try and have a set time of, okay, maybe 1.5 hours or an hour or whatever. And I know this may be something that's determined later on with the sociocracy, with those ways, but just for the next one, if that's not settled, would we like to, and for this one, I suppose we're 42 minutes in and we didn't talk about a whole lot of things yet, but.
Okay, maybe this is related. I think it's related because once the sociocracy gets going, the agenda should include how much time is going to be dedicated to each point in the agenda. So that way, at the beginning of the agenda, of the circle, you ask someone to be the timekeeper. So they already know the agenda and they can follow, like, for example, the status meeting altogether should be no more than 30 minutes. And within those 30 minutes, then each bullet point is already determined. Okay, the timekeeper knows that for the first one is going to take 20 minutes out of the 30 because it's a big deal, no? And the rested minutes, we're going to see 4 more bullet points of the agenda. But for the sake of what you're asking, we would rather have 90 minutes because that way it's like you don't need to have a break to go to pee on potable water and stuff like that.
And I think also once we fix or like figure out like the logistics and all these things like vision, mission, and aims and culture, like more the the logistics behind the meetings and the administrative stuff, then we have a lot more time really dedicated to the meeting, and then 90 minutes could be plenty. And maybe we even have like a dedicated speaker for some of the meetings or like a specific theme, no? But I think you suggested that inviting someone who can speak some more on unschooling, and then him having like 45 minutes or an hour.
Yeah, so all of that can happen on the same meeting, like 30 minutes first for status, and people already know, I don't want to be in the status. I only want to go for the invited speaker, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I know that that will happen right after the 30-minute mark.
how does it work as far as, oh, this may come up later, but I'm just curious. The way that we seem to do these meetings is not so far tonight, but once we start getting into the parenting and education things, it's kind of like we, usually I'll have some things and I'll talk about, and then we'll all start talking about things, and then people will have ideas and their own, you know, all this kind of stuff having to do with that. So with the way that you're talking about, with like a certain amount of minutes for each thing, let's say I talked for a moment about playfulness, which I'm going to do tonight, and then let's say that you and let's say Jorge and Sylvie had some like, oh, and this, and you wanted to add on. And when does that happen? Like, is that somehow planned into the, what you're calling the bullet points, or is that like some time at the end is dedicated to that? Like, we have a lot of conversing in the whole thing, you know, in our whole meeting, it seems like, or parts of it. Is this a time to tell about that?
Yeah, like the idea is to stack them, like 30 minutes maximum for each different section of the meeting. Usually the status goes first, no? So you can like report and fill out the logbook and whatever, and then you can have like another 30 minutes of operational meeting. And then for specific topics, you can determine the last 30 minutes we're going to discuss. So this is not a meeting requiring the presence of everybody. That part, it's only for people that already know, that want to be part of discussing playfulness. So only the people that want to be part of that conversation are going to be in that last 30 minutes of the whole 90 minutes. And you can go whatever, no, free form, but the idea is like to say, okay, why do we want to have this discussion? It is related to one of our aims, or it's just like social talk. You need to have like a very specific reason to have that conversation. And if it's something important for the aims, report the conclusion, not a decision, just like a conclusion. And maybe that would be the beginning of a proposal forming, to present a proposal to the group in the next status. But the proposal should need to be sent before the next meeting. Say, we have a proposal about playfulness that involves this, and it's related to these aims. So everybody gets to say, okay, I don't get it. I want to have a clarifying question now. And they can do all of these things that take a long time from the actual meeting prior to the meeting. And once you get to the meeting, you can do a round to consent on it, or to consent with concerns, or completely be objecting to it, you know? But this way, things get faster in the actual meeting. Yeah, so everything can be adapted.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so for the next one, do we want to say, so we've got January 31st, we want to go ahead and say 90 minutes, just tentatively? 90-minute meeting? Okay. Benjamin is giving them a thumbs up somewhere. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we got that. I'm just going to go ahead and do this the way I was going to do it, and then if there's an objection and we want to wait until we're following the sociocracy methods of asking, or we can always decide now and then revisit once we're doing it this other way. But the next one was going to be, would we like to have our 3-minute group prayer or positive thinking and feeling session always at the end of our meeting, or would we like it to be in the beginning? But then if someone is late, they may miss it, or in the middle. We agreed last time that our 3-minute group prayer, not religious unless you want it to be for you, would be about the cessation of fires in Australia until they are out, or we decide otherwise. And we had that 3-minute time at the end last time, and I used this little sound machine to make the rain sound that we all listened to in that 3 minutes, and Benjamin kept the time. Would we like to have and we agreed that we all wanted to have that 3 minutes, same thing. Do we want to have that at the end every time for our last 3 minutes?
By experience, I see that a lot of people like sometimes go off the meeting before the end of it. So my preference would be of the 3 options in the middle. So it's a nice way like to have a little break, no, and to refocus and maybe stretch or whatever.
I like that idea, Jorge, especially now that we've talked about having different meeting chunks, for lack of a better word, but it could be like a transition in between 2 of the meeting types.
Ray, do you have a preference, or is the middle good for you?
Middle sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, well, we're at the middle now. If we're going for 90 minutes tonight, then we're at the middle already. And Benjamin, would you like to keep the time again? And oh, before we do that though, I'm going to skip then to since we're now doing it in the middle. Is there a way to make the recording of our meeting have all of our faces on it, at least during that 3 minutes, so that everyone is not seeing either me with my eyes closed for 3 minutes or a blank screen if I turn off my video?
I think that whoever is recording, if they switch to the gallery view, it ends up recording in gallery view. But I'm not positive about that.
Well, I've recorded before, and I have a gallery view on my screen, but it's still recorded as whoever has it on my screen. It looks like a yellow box around the speaker. And when I did it, it still only did those single person. And last time Silesh did it, and I think he normally uses that because he talks about how it looks like the Brady Bunch in the beginning when we were first doing a Zoom meeting one time. And it did that same thing when he did. So I'm not sure how. I had seen it actually. Somebody, Patricia, I don't know, maybe you were in that meeting. Somebody put a meeting on Facebook. Maybe it wasn't a Vegan World 2026 meeting, but I think it was just this week, and it was maybe like the vegan religious study, something sort of like that. And everybody, I didn't watch it, but I could see on Facebook, I saw all the little pictures of everybody on it. Were you there, or do you know, does anybody know how to do it? You're on mute.
I don't know how to do it, but I'll learn how to do it. For this time around, I can pause the recording if you like.
Oh, okay. Or that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Or I can always put it on the thing. But once we figure out how to do it, I don't know, then if somebody's watching it and they wanted to join in for that 3 minutes, then they could, do it at that time. It wouldn't be quite the same because it wouldn't be the group, but anyway. Sure. Okay, so you want to pause the recording, and we will. And also, Benjamin, did you want to keep the time again?
Sure. That's it. Sounds good.
Okay. And what we were, for Patricia, what we were imagining was something in the prayer circle for animals on Facebook. On that page, someone put on there about having like 3 minutes of really like imagining all of the fires in Australia going out, and the rains, just heavy rains coming, and then for all of the animals and all of the people to be rejoicing about their safety and peace and all of that happening after it.
All right, I'll start now. Starting.
All right, I'll pause. Okay, we are recording again.
Thank you, Benjamin. Would you like to be the official 3-minute keeper when we do this?
Sure.
Okay.
Whenever I'm here, I can definitely do it.
Okay. Okay, well, next is getting into
I'd like to challenge Benjamin to be the 3-minute timekeeper. We have to come up with a system by which we can determine who's the better man. You know what? You're 2 for 2. You did it perfectly. I changed my mind. Withdrawn.
Okay, we are, I think we're ready to go to our parenting and education talking. Everybody ready for that? Okay. I was just going to talk about 5 practices of attachment parenting. There are many. One, and then we can just kind of talk about them. And I don't know how we'll do all of this once we do the sociocracy. I'll have to learn about that. But anyway, so just going the way we've been doing. The first 4 we can say as a word, PACE, P-A-C-E. Playfulness is one, such as doing different activities together. And it also kind of includes in there admitting mistakes, kind of taking things lightly. So when the parent or the adult makes a mistake, to admit it as soon as they recognize it and try and make things right. And also, this one I think is so important, and I read about this in, I think, which of my attachment parenting books. I think it was this one, Attachment Focused Parenting. That's probably my favorite one. But it says always assume good intentions with children, and so I have, as soon as I read that a couple years ago, I started. I mean, I think I always kind of did that, but I just can do it really intentionally now. And then last year, I really started thinking about trying to do that with everyone, so adults too. And it kind of changed my perspective about people who aren't vegan and people who I hear say things or see doing things, different things that if I normally might have, I don't know, not that I would have assumed something, a different way, but just to always assume good intentions anyway. So that's that one. And I guess I'll just go through the 5, and then if anybody wants to, if we want to talk further about them, or should we do one at a time? One at a time and talk. Does anybody want to talk about that, or should I keep going? Keep going? Talk? Keep going? Okay. The A for PACE is acceptance. To accept the children's inner life, to reduce any anger if the adult is upset about something that has happened, to try to reduce that as quickly as possible, and to safeguard the relationship at all times. So, like if there's something that happens, then to try to always put the relationship first. And always try to keep that so that it's just first, and that it's not going to be temporarily or hopefully not permanently damaged because of the way that they're being treated and understood and accepted. So to safeguard the relationship. Shall I go on to the next, or anybody want to talk about that? Go to the next. Okay. I guess I better ask the question slower, because then I ask 2 questions and it's nod. Okay. Okay. Curiosity, and so that one is kind of can change. So like, as when the children are babies and we're just so curious, every little expression and just, looking at every little hair and all of this. And then as they start doing more things and all, everything that happens as they get older, then the curiosity can be about what they think, how they're feeling, what they're interested in, and all of these things. And as we're, thinking about these things, we can see how some of the current parenting and education systems or models or methods don't allow some of these things to happen, including like the curiosity. If the children are always told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and all of their time is scheduled practically every day of the week and every hour, then how can we show that curiosity if everything is always imposed on them, So if they don't even have time maybe to have their own interests, then how can we be curious about their interests if they can't even have a time to, know what they're interested in? And then the fourth for PACE, empathy, that we're always ready to join the child in their emotional state, with the intention of assisting them to manage the experience, even the stressful experience. And so, and not to be trying to fix a problem or rescue them from the problem, and not by distracting them from their whatever the problem or their feelings are, but by simply being present and in the event with them. So I know, sometimes people even just, and not trying to do anything wrong, they're trying to help, but if a child is really upset because their favorite toy just broke, let's say, then the parent might be trying to be helpful, but if, let's say they're like crying, they're like, let's say a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, but it broke, and they're crying and upset. Oh, but look, you have this other toy. Look at this. You've got another one. It's okay. And that trying to, well, that's probably doing several things. That's probably the trying to fix it, trying to rescue, and trying to distract, which then doesn't let you be, or doesn't let the person be present with them. Oh, I know you love that toy. That must be so hard that it's broken now, and then go on, from there. And then the fifth one I was going to mention is intersubjectivity, which is kind of like goes along with that empathy, joining the child or another adult in their experience, and matching their affective state. So kind of like what I was just talking about, like with the toy, and helping them make better sense of it. And the way that book words it is where the mind and heart meet. And that's all, doing that is also great for when children are angry, or when they're super excited and it's time to, they've got to maybe stop being super excited. Like if, let's say, they were just outside, I don't know, blowing bubbles, and they were chasing the bubbles all around, and then now it's time to, I don't know why someone would be doing that before bedtime, but let's say it's bedtime, for example, and then they've got to stop this, wonderful, they're so excited, oh, it was so fun, and they were running, and then now it's time to stop. And I think to be following that really is really helpful to match their affective state. So for example, oh, I know, that is so fun. Wasn't that exciting to chase the bubbles, and you got to run and you could catch them and then they popped? That was so exciting, wasn't it? And then as you talk through it, and then can kind of then go into the, oh, but now, now we're going to get ready for bed, or whatever the thing is. And that book is so great about explaining how all of these things work, just in explaining them. And then also it has so many wonderful examples, and it's again, it's attachment focused parenting. I bought it on Amazon, but it gives so many examples of the things actually happening, like better examples than I'm just making up right now, I'm sure. But they give so many examples so you can see what it's really like. I remember, I think it was in that one where like a boy broke his arm or something, they said, and so the parent was talking about being scared, and they were like at the hospital, and it was hurting, and he was scared or something, and she was like, oh, the mom was, like, oh, I know, it must be so scary to have that happen, and I'm going to be here with you this whole time, and talking through it. But anyway, those are the 5 things. There were many, but those are 5. And Patricia, I know, said that she used attachment parenting with her kids, and that they're adults and doing great now. I don't know if she wanted to talk, or if anybody else wanted to talk about any of that, or have questions, or add on, or.
Well, I would love to share, because, my son is 30, my daughter's 23, and tears are coming to my eyes, because just today I talked to my kids, and my son, I learned attachment parenting when my kids were in the womb. I had a home birth with both of them. I nursed. The problem was I never wanted kids. But both times, if I told you the stories, you would be like, whoa, that's really weird. It wasn't just a matter of not very good planning. They were like miracles. My kids were miracles that I had them with two different fathers. So I'm so grateful that I learned about this and unschooling and nonviolent communication. I learned nonviolent communication when my son was in the womb. Marshall Rosenberg was in Encinitas, and I was able to take classes from him and his teachers. And I mean, I just feel so blessed. However, my kids needed to remind me, it's been recent, maybe the last couple of years, they've become really vulnerable with me and told me things that didn't work, even though I thought I knew this stuff by the book, you know, and but the problem was I was just always like being present with them all the time. I was great at empathy, but the problem was I was contributing to their problems by not really wanting to be a parent and wanting to go save the world. And so they felt that tornness. In fact, I ran away when my daughter was 3 and my son was 10, and we've talked about it and done a lot of healing, even recently, because my son didn't really understand why I ran away, but it was because I wanted to save the world, and there was so much chaos happening with my kids and one of their fathers. And so I'll just conclude by saying that these theories, they are good, and I'm really close to my kids, and if I didn't know them, I don't know where we would be. But it is, so much is affected by the, you know, our inner child, it has to do with healing our childhood wounds. I needed to heal my childhood wounds so that I could really embrace being a parent. And so I guess all that is to say that I think it's really important when they teach attachment parenting, when we teach that we, like when things come up within ourselves, like to be able to have those skills to reparent our own selves and to have techniques to heal when we weren't treated that way. And so thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have anything to share about any of these? Playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy, intersubjectivity, or anything else?
Well, I love all of them, Jessica. Thank you for sharing. And Patricia, the reparenting concept I love, and I think that fits with something that was a note from our last meeting. It was adult education, and that kind of, those two concepts seem to go together as like making sense for this group to talk about too.
This whole thing reminds me of the learning days, like connecting it to what Jessica mentioned of like how to integrate this into sociocracy. Learning days is a way that everybody can contribute with some kind of hobby, interest, research, professional knowledge, whatever, to the people in their groups. And that's kind of like the thing that we're going to do this Sunday in the permaculture, vegan permaculture study group. And yeah, I understand the techniques and this part of the book that Jessica shared with us, and also Patricia point of view. So I would love to see sessions on each, you know, not just like this is good, but to really learn it, maybe a planned session for me is more beneficial. Thank you.
Good idea. I wrote it down. When I figure out how we're supposed to do this, write it down officially and type it up, I'll put it in. Okay. Anybody else want to talk about any of that? Right? No? Okay. Okay, well then next it was to just talk about some things from the meeting last time that, like some questions that were asked. So after my homeschooling or unschooling plus presentation, Jorge asked, wouldn't it be great to have vegan unschooling neighbors? I don't know if we want to try to talk about that at all, but yes, I think so. We've thought of that too. And like I know, like with Silesh, with the, what does he call it? The imaginal cell, anyway, how he was going to do it in Costa Rica and then he was going to do it somewhere in the US. I saw one talk one time on a video where he was, I think he was in Colorado. Are you all in Colorado, Benjamin and Suzanne? Where are you? No? Where are you?
We're in the Portland, Oregon area.
Oh, okay. I can't remember where he was, but he was talking about doing these kinds of like, sort of like the little, like a little neighborhood with tiny houses, or I don't know if he was talking about the tiny houses there, but he was talking about doing stuff like that. And somebody from the audience was like, I'm ready. I don't know who's ready to live in that with me, but I'm ready. And so I don't know how to make this happen other than we've talked about that before. Like when there's like a house for sale in our neighborhood, we're like, wouldn't it be great if there's like a neighborhood where that's like nice and the houses turn over like now and then we can like gradually people can move in, you know, or like if people can have those kinds of things. But anyway, I don't know if that's something to talk about now, or if you were just kind of generally stating, wouldn't that be neat? But I wrote it down, so I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that.
I think what the name is the Sacred Line Project.
Sacred Lifeline?
Sacred Lifeline Project.
Yes.
And there's 2 documents about that in the main Vegan World 2026. And yeah, like we have a friend with a 3.5-year-old daughter, also conceived vegan and everything. And she's super healthy, super high energy. But I'm starting to see the consequences of not being in a culture that nurtures all of this, you know? Like grandmothers pampering her and she's losing track of like, I don't know, like if she had more vegan homeschooling friends that don't question all the time her lifestyle choices. I mean, it's good because it will create like a tough skin, but at the same time, I would say, oh, like if it was my daughter, I would like to see that she's not a minority, you know? And because we're working on the 2026 exponential transformation, she will enjoy it, right? Yeah, but I see so many benefits about these spaces to really create this vegan and beyond vegan, no? Like with all the 7 core shifts. Culture for me is very enthusiastic. Like I feel that I really want to be part of making this happen.
Was there anything in the Sacred Lifeline project that talked about education? Because it talked about the different units that people would live in, that there would be a certain amount of units set aside for college students. But that's an interesting framework for, if such a project got off the ground, what kind of education would be recommended, and would that be some sort of a group? Would it be unschooling or some sort of a it takes a village to raise a child kind of approach?
I don't remember reading anything about the education method for children in these documents, or in the section in the homepage on the website of Climate Healers. They also don't mention anything specific for education. Yeah, but the way I see it is that parents parents are not worked and children are not schooled. So in that sense, we cover the parent education and unschooling children, like in this new culture, everybody is learning the whole time, even if you're an adult, and everybody's contributing to co-create this culture, especially kids. That's how I see it. And yeah, like the unschooling and the attachment parenting and so many other techniques can be used. I don't know if you have seen a project. I can find the link. A project that Beck Fund presented in one of their webinars. Veg Fund or Beck Fund? Veg Fund.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Veg fund, like vegetable.
Like vegetables, okay. And they mention humane education program in China, and the person that implemented it had a researcher from the United States to evaluate the impact of running this program in elementary school in China, and it was amazing. Like kids were not taught veganism; they were taught to recognize needs and emotion and empathy towards all creatures. And it was great, no? So yeah, there's so much we can do outside of the state imposed educational or doctrinational brainwashing programs.
I'd like to say that one of the things that is really helpful is just to have homeschooling groups or unschooling groups. What I've noticed is unschooling is getting a lot more popular. We unschooled our kids. They didn't read till they were like 9, and then they learned like in 3 weeks, and that kind of stuff. And my son went to college and got a master's degree, so I have a little bit of that's kind of off the topic, but I feel really so confident of unschooling that I'm kind of an unschooling evangelist. And so if people would have, if we could teach people like this person who has a 3.5-year-old to start a learning circle, and it doesn't necessarily have to be vegan, but you can't, if a person starts, it just occurs to me, if a person starts a group, they have the prerogative to say, we're only going to have vegan snacks because of, plant-based diet or something. That is one of the rules. So they could have that, so that those people who are coming can be either pre-vegans or people who are into health, or vegans would be especially attracted to it. So I think giving and I have a book called How to Create a Learning Center. So learning centers are great. I think if somebody was to research what's happening with homeschoolers, I mean, there's a lot happening with unschoolers and homeschoolers that I think about how they're organizing groups, because that was essential for me as a unschooler to have those groups.
And we had talked about, Patricia, in the last couple of meetings, basically what we had covered in the previous meetings. Let's see, I don't remember how many meetings ago it was, but it was one of the meetings that was just Sailesh and Jackie and me. And I was having trouble sleeping that night because I just kept going over the things that we were talking about that night were the same things that we had come up with that we were talking about the other times. And I just kept thinking, it seems like we need a name. What can we call this? And I started thinking about the first letter for the words, the main words about what we were talking about. And then, and anyway, it came up. Then my husband and I were talking about it the next day, and we figured Avenue was it. So it's AVENU, and then we later added the E. And so it's A for attachment parenting, V for veganism, E for earth, and the thermostat species, N for necessary instruction, which we talked about last time, of any things that they would need to be taught for either the current system that we're in or otherwise. The U for unschooling, and the last E was for equality. And so we were talking about how that was on here. I was going to have Jackie wanted to talk about that too, about how can we start implementing some of these things now. So we're going to be, as you know, this group, as we keep going on, get really in depth, and like how Jorge was saying, it would be nice to have, like a session, a 30-minute session or whatever on playfulness, and really get into that. And as we're getting really in depth with some of the things, there are definitely some things like with the Avenue method that anyone who wants to can go ahead, like Jackie and Jessica Solomon, they want to start a school. And so they can go ahead, and if they would like to, use this or any parts of it, they can go ahead and do that with, now, or like, this is what I do. This is basically what I do with my kids. And so, so we can, like you're saying, we can go ahead, and there are these ways, and like the book that you're talking about and things, and we can go ahead now. And then, so that brings us to Jorge's next, or his question he asked last time is, how can we make this, the Avenue method, worldwide for Vegan World 2026? And then similarly, or kind of related to that, and he said, how exactly can we adapt this to different people in different areas based on their resources and in and out of the home? And I think with these different, once I learn about the sociocracy and how I'm supposed to catalog our discussions, or whoever is going to do that, we can put all of these things like the playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy, intersubjectivity, and then all of the Avenue, what all that stands for, and all these things that we talk about, put these into some sort of document, and maybe sometimes include some videos about them and some tutorials or things like that, where then whoever wants to go ahead and do something like this, that if they're not already, then they can put the things we're coming up with, put this framework into action now, and then just go more in depth with it as we go along and add more things to it, if that helps them move on with it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear about Avenue, because I've been trying to develop my values and what is it that I value about in the community, the Jesus Vegans Interfaith community, which will be have a school. We want to have a school. It's not, it's only a concept, and it's land, and it's a common house where there could be a school already, but that's really helpful to have that, and all the things. Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things with starting a community, is to have all that stuff conceptualized. I just feel like I've been writing for years, so I feel really excited, and I will have some things to add. And I would also like to say that as a new person in this group, I've felt really overall very comfortable and welcomed, and I've kind of taken some risks because that's the kind of person I am. However, I think if a new person came in and then they didn't know what had gone on before, like I don't like to repeat things or ask questions that have already been asked, or just, I just would hope that if you're going to invite more new people, that they would really, like, I just want to say, and I'm really, I felt a little uneasy when I said, you've got to have a decision-making group. I felt like I was coming like, you guys need to do this. I mean, that's the sociocracy rule. I mean, I thought, what am I doing here? I'm brand new and I'm telling them what they have to do. I felt a tiny bit of pushback from you, Ray, because you said, no, we're not going to do that. And it's like, I don't know if that's what you're saying. That's what I perceive. But I go, what am I doing? However, maybe what I would rather rephrase that, and I'm a great example of somebody who's been practicing MVC for 30, I know because my son's 30, so 30 years, you know, I still blow it all the time. It's like, so I would say, I felt a little sad and disappointed in myself when I shared that, and I wish I could have said, I'm concerned about just opening this group up to a lot of people because I'm sensing you already have some connection and guidance and a lot of foundation, and that these new people coming in, if they can just be guided like, this is what we're doing, and you're welcome, and your voice is welcome, and we want you here, and you can be involved in decision making. But if they have to feel like they have to help make all the decisions when they come, they might feel overwhelmed and not want to come back. Because a lot of people don't like to hear that stuff. I loved hearing Jorge. Every minute you talk about sociocracy, you know, it's like, oh, that's just reinforcing stuff I've learned. But I don't think most people want to talk about how we're making decisions. So that's what my hope for this group. I feel it's such a special group, and already I feel this connection with that you guys all have, and I almost feel like an outsider coming in, and yet I feel welcomed. But I want to encourage you to keep that precious connection, and I don't want you to lose anything. So that's, how do you feel when I say that?
One of the things that new people, if they join the group, they'll be able to watch these videos and catch up on what we've talked about. And we'll encourage that because, like you said, we don't want to be repeating ourselves every time somebody joins and have to go through the entire steps of the process. I think that's reasonable. That's one of the reasons why we're recording the videos in the first place, so people that are joining don't have to start from scratch.
Okay, and I didn't get that. I didn't know I could watch those videos, so somehow I missed that. I don't know how.
And I'm glad you mentioned nonviolent communication, because when I was going through Avenue, the paper I'm looking at doesn't say what it's for, and I actually said the N wrong. The necessary instruction was falling with the U. It was unschooling and necessary instruction, and the N in Avenue is for nonviolence and nonviolent communication.
Okay.
And also, we're going to try to make sometime soonish video, I hope, about what this group is about, and include some of the main points like the Avenue method and things like that. And I talked with Ray about maybe all of the projects in Vegan World 2026 can all, like, each group can make their own, I don't know, 2 to 3, 4 minute, just very short, concise video about what it is that they do, like in the tiniest little, amount of time, so that, like, so that you know something, because otherwise, if you just see the description on the, like, you're filling out the survey or something, it doesn't tell about Avenue or this, any of the things that we talked about since then. But maybe just a short little video would be helpful to people too. And maybe in that video, it can talk about where to see the video recordings of the meetings. And maybe
it would be pretty hard for somebody to watch like 3 if they're coming into the meeting to try to watch all the meetings leading up to it so they're all caught up. That might be a challenge.
Right, that's true. And then as we go on, there's going to be more and more meetings. And so if somebody's joining next year and we've had, 50 meetings, they're not going to watch 50 meetings. So, but at least they'll have like a little 3-minute.
Yeah, and how they can get involved, and then when you have your structure together, how they can be, where their decision-making voice can fit in, how they can be their feedback. That is just so important. You know, how can we welcome your feedback instead of being like, I want to make fun of myself, like Patricia, just coming in and telling everybody what to do, and just being playful.
Jorge, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yes. Maybe this is where the agenda would become very useful, because people would know that the structure of the 90 minutes involves some kind of like decision-making, governance, or there's some part of the 90 minutes that they can join and have the juice of the real reason why this study group is created, jumping all the status and the operational and the decision making. And this is one aspect that would work. And the other aspect, it was mentioned in the BCI, is that new members for the BCI would need to audit 3 sessions. So they get to decide if that's something for them or not. So the combination of these two, like a well-structured agenda and the auditing of 3 sessions before joining a group, I think that would maybe help out solving the situation that you're describing. Because I agree, like watching all the videos, and right now we don't know exactly where to look for them, and maybe realizing that the stages of a group coming together, we're in the beginning of it. I know that this base camp has been going for years, but something happened at the end of last year that maybe by doing all these questions at the live person, how do you call it? Like the one that happened in Arizona, like this speed things up, and now people are gathering at base camp and at these Zoom meetings. So I would call it like this is conforming, like this is like just starting. And yeah, it will have a learning curve of dealing with all that you are bringing up. Like maybe I wouldn't adventure to say that we have all been part of groups before in our lives, and we've seen this stage. So yeah, like it requires a little bit of exercising empathy and flexibility, and because it's coming together, and it's a great moment to tweak it.
Or you could add patience. Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. And I just joined base camp like a month ago, I think, and maybe 5 weeks, because I started getting involved with the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. And so yeah, I just thought everything was all together, because it just felt like, so this has been around for years. And so yeah, so and that is something at the culture, really, this recording, listening to it, I think we are going to glean a lot, because we're already talking about the culture of the group, you know, the empathy, that we need to be patient. We're at the stage we're at, defining the stage. If we're going to invite people in, hey, you know, we're still doing this, and like the half an hour, that sounds like, but you have now, right now, are we going to make that decision? Should we do, could you lead a consent round? Because that is probably one of the most important decisions we could make, is shall we do that, the 3 parts, so that people can jump in if they want to hear that. If they want to get in on decision making, yeah, come in on that first half hour. And if you want to come in on presentation, discussion, second. are we up for making a concrete decision that we can write down and say, we made this a decision as a group, or is our time up?
Well, actually, you pointed out something very important, Jorge, that this is a really new group, even though it's probably one of the ones that's been around, that it was actually in Basecamp for a fair bit longer. But I was brought on in November to create a bunch of different groups that were empty and to start populating them and copy all the questions that were collected at the conference and sort them into the different groups. And with Suzanne's help, we made a sign-up survey to get people that didn't attend the conferences to join the Basecamp. So everything is fresh and new. And there is a distinction between study groups and task forces. Generally, every group is starting off as a study group, except for ones where it makes a lot more sense that the expertise is in place, like the medical education task force. They already have, they don't really require any more studying. They can now go and start fulfilling some of the tasks. So the decisions are a little bit more proactive in how are we going to engage the community and educate them on the truths of veganism. This one is a study group, so I'm just thinking of parallels with other groups. Sometimes there's experts out there that weren't at the conference. They aren't in the, they haven't signed up for the Basecamp, but they would be valuable people to contribute to the conversations. We've seen a list of dozens of books that have to do with parenting. All of them have an author, and presumably half of them at least are still alive. Getting them involved in our Basecamp, they're people in the world. We can get them on board. So we'll have all that wealth of knowledge to include and share. Even if they're not in Basecamp, there's a feature that I have really not tested out much yet, but it's to add people on as a client so that they are kind of attached to the Basecamp, but you can limit how much they're involved in the conversation. So I think it would apply for somebody that was giving a presentation, a one-time thing that they may or may update us every couple months, but they're not really part of the Basecamp itself. So there's a lot of different tools that we can use. And I think that rather than limiting the number of people that are involved in a group, I think that there's a mandate for us to recruit, go out and find the people that are connected to the information that really do this forward thinking to what education and parenting is going to be like in the future. What are where are the trends that are all the worst parts of parenting? What is that are being sloughed off as we presumably progress? That's not on today's agenda. So maybe this is something that we could put a pin in it now and talk about it on a future agenda.
Well, I guess I was just, my question would be, how can we get to a place where this group, I mean, I'm not committing, I think it's, to be in this group because I might be more of a resource person. But I'm glad, and I'm just so drawn to these principles, and I'm really glad I came tonight because I'm learning a lot about Basecamp. I just think that if somebody if you don't come to a place where you decide how you make decisions and who are going to make that decisions, I know I'm hearing that you don't want to limit people. However, if you don't get your structure together, it's going to be hard to invite people because you're struggling during your meetings to say, well, I'm not sure what we're going to do, or I don't know about sociocracy, or I don't know if we can make a decision about that. So what I was proposing is, or maybe I could refine the proposal in a way you were making an objection, I think. I'm coming up with a proposal to ask for consent, and that is, how that, actually, I'm going to refine it. It's like, would it be beneficial just to have a meeting that's all about how is this group going to make decisions, and how are you going to, what is your culture? What is your VPA? I think it's called. Yeah, I want to encourage, I want to make that proposal and see if we can, and by, when you make a proposal, what we do is we, in consent, you go around and you either say, I consent, or I have an objection, and then we just keep going around until the proposal is tweaked, until everybody can say it's good enough for now, safe enough to try. So I'm wondering if you guys might be willing to try that. Who objects to trying that? Raise your hand if you object.
I don't object. I don't quite understand it. I've made the distinction. This is a study group. That implies that our main objective is to study, to bring knowledge to this space and collect it and share it, and find other people that can bring it to the space. And I'm sure that it's going to be a rule through all the Basecamp groups that inclusiveness is probably job number one. The idea that we got here first, therefore our rules are going to stand, I think that's a non-starter.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're objecting to the proposal that you have. I mean, did you hear that my proposal was to invite everybody to a meeting that is going to talk about how the group is structured? Did you think I was saying only to include the people who have been invited?
Can I say something about it? Like, I think what you're proposing, Patricia, it is going to happen. Like okay. Because there's so many groups already, you know, and sometimes because I signed up just for 9 of them, and I don't know how many more there are. I think there are like 12 or 13. I don't remember. Like, I'm not connected to them. So right now, the only way that we're going to have like a full effect on the whole Basecamp is to make this proposal that you're suggesting within the VCI group. Because this way, every group is going to learn how to do what you're proposing, and that way it's going to scale up or domino to all the other groups, and that part is very delicious, no? Like to see people consenting with concerns and counting them and make the decision. But for the sake of just making the exercise, we could do it. But for the sake of coming to a decision that affects the group, I think it's better like more productive and efficient to plan it on the VCI, on the VCI meeting, which might happen this Tuesday or next Tuesday. That's my guess. I also don't want to impose it. But
also that group's responsibility.
What I want to clarify is if you just want to do the exercise, or you want to come to a decision if we decide to do the consent round, like just to see how it works, or to come to a decision, like a real life scenario.
Well, I'm willing to. Actually, I'm not quite sure what I want now, because it sounds like what you're saying is that this group really can't make any decisions, and therefore somebody's making decisions, because there's always somebody making decisions, and it doesn't make sense to me. So I think right now, so I don't get frustrated, I will just withdraw and say, you guys do whatever you want to do, and good luck.
Does that?
Yeah, I had a few thoughts. Earlier, Patricia, you mentioned something about circles being inside each other, and I had been taking notes with that same image, and I did come up with something that where VCI isn't in the center. I'll have to post it later. VCI isn't in the center, but it does connect all of the other project groups. And maybe I don't know if this is the sociocratic way to do this, but I would propose or amend your proposal, Patricia, that this parenting and education group specifically partners with VCI, like since education and reparenting and that kind of stuff is a focus of this group, maybe that sociocracy and figuring out how do we communicate it with everyone, that can be a joint project between VCI and parenting and education. So I don't know if we need another meeting or, just what people think about that. Maybe this isn't a proposal. I don't know.
See, I appreciate that you asked if that was the correct way. This is what we do around. Everybody gets to give their input, and then you can give that's great to just revise it. That's great. Yeah, that's part of it. Somebody just throws out a proposal and it might be completely different than what that proposal is, but we have something to work with, and then we hear from everyone. That's part of the the thing. I like that the proposal would be to partner with them to look so that you guys can learn sociocracy, and it sounds like you're in this group. We have some people who are almost everybody seems to be interested in it. So that can be actually part of learning sociocracy, I think, is the missing ingredient to all these things, to Avenue, because without a governing structure of who makes decisions and how, then you're just constantly having to use a lot of empathy, a lot of patience, a lot of, a lot of constraint, because you have to reinvent the wheel all the time. Does that make sense?
Well, I made the distinction between a study group and a task force, and I think that it would help me if we gave our impression of what a study group should do. Because if we're a task force, then there's going to be a lot of important decisions to be made. If we're a study group, then it's a lot of the pressure is off. What we need to do is to study, to learn things, to share what we know about the topic itself, but also look for other people that may be people that come to the group, or it may be people who have written books on the topic. Finding the information that builds a foundation of what the future of education and parenting looks like, both from the two models that are given to us with the Basecamp system, was with the conference, was that there are transition methods, which are shift solutions, and new model solutions, which kind of envision that new world of what education and parenting is going to look like. So as a study group, this is one of the things that the steering committee of the Vegan Collective Intelligence determines, is when a study group is ready to transition into a task force. And I'm not sure if there needs to be much of a hierarchy. There is a lot of things that need to be determined meeting as a group, even as a small group, like the next meetings, what sort of items should be on the agenda. But I think that studies should be, high up in the topics of each meeting's agenda. Otherwise, we're just going to be administrating each other and going through protocol. And as Jorge mentioned, this should be fun. And I think that it has the danger of just becoming a bunch of bureaucracy. And we can play this video for some people, and they might be able to give us a little bit of a feedback as to whether they felt that much studying was going on in this group. Jessica was bringing in some details, and we're learning from that, from what she was presenting. And this is stuff that I'm starting from scratch. I'm not. My kids went to public school. I went to public school. My parents are both teachers, but they were both teachers in public school. So I can share what I think didn't work about those particular things, and I've already asked my parents questions about how they feel about public school as being part of it. And I can recognize a lot of improvements over the way that I've seen education over my lifetime. So I'll mute myself now. And
Ray, I'm really hearing that you're perhaps uncomfortable with the amount of time that we've had to spend today, and perhaps even I would like to really know your very, honest feelings if you have perceived that I've come in and maybe disturbed the ability of the group to study, or I'm pulling the group away from the purpose.
I would like to say something about it. I think, Patricia, that we've been in like 7 meetings, and I think the point that Ray is bringing up is unknown to almost everybody in these meetings. Like we just heard in the last BCI meeting, that's this Tuesday, the explanation that Sailesh made about the distinction between a study group and a task force. So yeah, that was really new. Like that was a piece of the puzzle that it was not clear to me, and by the way everybody reacted, it was not clear to anyone. So this is really new. So in what Ray is mentioning, that we're maybe becoming bureaucrats, there's this risk, but also the benefit would be to have structure. For example, one of the main aims of the study group is to answer a set of questions that are posted on the message board on each study group. I haven't seen them all. Like I have, like the ones I'm registered, and I've been looking at them, and there's the shift questions and the new model questions. So if you go through them, for example, not in this group, but in the vegan permaculture group, we're already asking, like, are these the questions that we want to work on in the study group? So sociocracy would be great to establish, okay, we want to study in this group, but using these questions, or revise them first and then come to an agreement to say, okay, we have the final list of questions that we really want to work on in this study group. So sociocracy would be helpful for determining that. That's the way I see it. And that's the first step to really get working to become a task force. And once we become a task force using sociocracy, it's going to be super easy. It takes a little while, and like we said, what did you say? Patience, empathy. It's like it's coming together, and yeah, like people would say, "Oh, this was so basic to know that study groups are meant to become task force," but we didn't know. Most of us didn't know. So now we know, and we can act on it, and it's all moving forward.
But I'm hearing from Ray that he thinks that this discussion we're having about structure, it is a typical thing I've learned in my last 40 years of living, maybe 45. There's always there's this tension between people who want to just do, and then people who want to have structure, or that structure's too much. And I really do want to find out from Ray. I want to find out right now, is in real time, I sense a conflict between us. I wonder, how do you solve your conflicts in this group? I'm feeling tension. I gave a proposal. I wanted to do something. Ray, you said you didn't want to do something. it's like, okay, I want to do, this is my best tip for raising kids. Oh, there's one toy and there's 2 kids. What are we going to do about it? So there's one meeting right here. There's two things on the table, and there's you know, you have a need, Ray, to say, let's not talk about this, and I have a need to let's figure this out. Can we just make a decision about the next meeting? Can we have, and so we have different needs on the table. That's NBC. And if you guys aren't going to practice the things that I want to, so anyway, Ray, how are you feeling right now about what I'm saying? I really want to know.
I really need to understand that you understand that this is a study group. That's I was making the distinction for a reason, and you're concerned about my feelings about it. I just wanted to establish that we actually intend to study, and that this is a structure that I want to be open to other people. You described, taking control of the decision-making process. I don't think that there's an awful lot of decisions to be made when we're a study group.
Okay, so
The decision at some point should be bringing together knowledge to
really
study.
Want to
Sorry,
know, Ray,
Patricia, I gave you a long time to speak. I'm answering your question. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have a conflict here. It's an unresolved conflict. I just want to acknowledge that. So
Patricia, you still haven't expressed to me whether you understand that it's a study group. You've expressed that I'm giving you resistance, but I'm asking you directly if you understand the distinction between a study group and a task force.
Well, I think what I'm hearing you say is that a study group is just about studying topics that somebody's decided that you're supposed to just study, and a task force implements what you've learned. Is that right? And a study group doesn't need to make very many decisions, and therefore it's not important for them to have any structure for governing. Is that right?
Well, that can be true. We have other groups that have existed without any leadership whatsoever. And because there's a brainstorming of ideas, sharing of ideas of the topic in particular. We have discussed methodology, and I think that's something that is important early on in the discussion process. I'm not resenting anything that was on the agenda. I think the agenda looks very, very much like talking about things that we need to discuss, and I'm okay with that.
How's everybody else feeling? I would love to hear from everyone else how you're feeling right now.
Jessica, I know you're in the queue, so do you have something you want to say now? Or I'm generally confused about task forces and study groups. I think there's a lot of overlap. I think it's something we can discuss on like the Vegan World 2026 channel or something else, but to me, tonight we decided to talk about, we have Avenue. There was, decision and action done there, not just studying. So I'm confused about it, I guess.
Well, I mean study in the sense of bringing together information. Avenue is a product of our brainstorming. So maybe study is a misleading word, but to have any brand new group immediately, start out in our projects, I don't understand what this group has accomplished to the point where we're able to go out and be a task force and change the nature of education as we know it. We're just beginning. I certainly can't be an agent of that. I need this group to teach me. I need to study. I need to be brought up to speed. I'm not an expert on the topic.
What I was going to say was that okay, first, the way that this group came about in the first place, and as Ray said, we were one of the first ones to be doing anything, was because when I found Climate Healers last year, and then I got on the Vegan World 26 website and wherever all, anyway, and then Sailesh added me to Basecamp, and I looked at Basecamp, and I had heard him speaking on videos and things like that, and I gathered that he wanted Basecamp to be a place where a bunch of people from all over the world could get together online and use Basecamp as a tool to communicate and collaborate to do all of the things necessary to help us reach a vegan world by 2026, including answering the questions that were come up with that everyone came up with at the Vegan World 2026 conference in 2018. And so when I realized that's what he wanted to happen, I looked at, or I thought about what I thought needed to happen, and I looked at the list, and I asked if there was a group for parenting and education, because I felt like that was the number one thing, not the number one thing, a huge part of what needs to change for Vegan World, and all the 7 core shifts and everything like that. And so I asked Sailesh, is there a group for that already? And if there is not, if you would like to start one, I will be happy to be on it, if there is ever one. And he started it and put me and some other people in it. And for the first meeting, it was me and Jackie. And so, and Jackie's been at, I think, all the meetings except for this one and one other one. I think it's the 6th one, so she's been in 4 of 6. I've been in all 6. Ray's been in most. Sailesh has been in some, and Jorge and Sylvie and Benjamin's been. So anyway, so we've had these different meetings, and I understood that the study groups were different. I knew that from the beginning, that the study groups were different from the task forces. And the way that I kind of understood all of this is that, or this is just my impression for all of this, is that if I feel like I understand that I think that something needs to happen, or something needs to be done, if I know about it and I'm able to do it, then I try to do it. And, or if I don't, or I see, I think this needs to be done, then I try to figure out, well, who would be the person who might be able to do that, and so this was, for this group, I thought I could help with that. So anyway, Jackie and I volunteered to kind of lead this group. And at the last meeting, we each went around and talked about why we were interested in or passionate about these subjects in the first place. And the way that we have kind of just been talking about doing the meetings has been just very organic. And we talked about that in the first few meetings, like, what do we want to do? Do we want to just kind of talk about the things that we think that we don't like about education currently, the system, and things that we don't really like about the current parenting methods that are widely used, and then talk about what we do like about those, or what we think it should be, and so on. And then we've been having these organic discussions around those types of things, and that's how we came up with the avenue, because it kind of came out of our discussions about what we thought things should be. And to me, I'm fine with the way that the previous meetings have been, just kind of going like that, except for that's why I wanted to talk about the length of time. And see, now we've been already 2 hours and 7 minutes, but just because I wanted to make sure we didn't just go on and on every time, and that I didn't want that to prohibit anyone from wanting to join in on the meetings if they know that they can go really long, and they might not want to go really long every time. It's just this is the first meeting that's been like this, where there's been a lot of discussion about how are we going to do things. None of the other ones were like that. It was just a little bit of time of, should we do this? Should we talk about this now? Does everybody like that? If you have a problem with it, you don't agree with one, and you have one to add, does anybody have anything to add to that? And it's just been, and in my opinion, it's worked well for the other meetings. This was a very different one. And then as far as the agenda going, or using the agenda for tonight, I felt like we were going to be really rushed, and it was just kind of such a different feel for all that was going on because of this one was just different. And so I was kind of rushing with the going through the pace and the intersubjectivity kinds of things, and then the rest. And we didn't go through the rest because we ran out of time, and then we started talking about how we're going to do meetings again. But anyway, that's all I was going to say was, and that was probably too long of an explanation, but that's how this group came about for anyone who doesn't know. And as far as what Ray's saying about the study group, and as far as using sociocracy in this group, I don't know, because I'm not familiar with sociocracy, other than what I've heard here and the little bit that I read from the VCI meeting that I think the notes that Suzanne took. So I don't know how we'll do the meeting in the future, but as far as I'm concerned, I've been fine doing them the other way, like I said, except for the length of time for the last one. And I think that there's a way to deal with that if we know, without knowing that we're going to have a meeting on like every certain amount of time. I think that it can seem like, well, we've got to keep going this time because we don't know when we're going to meet again. So let's do as much as we can right now. So for me, it would be helpful to know we're going to meet on a regular basis in this amount of time. So then if we think, okay, well, we kind of talked just free flow talking and we didn't get through all the things on the agenda, that's okay, because then we can revisit, we can start there in 2 weeks or something. That's fine with me. I'm kind of like, very I think I'm in the way about doing the meetings and things like that. I feel like I like it to be really organized, but also organic at the same time, so that the organization is kind of a starting point, and then if it evolves into something else, or not something else, if the discussion about the organized parts lasts longer or something like that, for me, that's totally fine. I'm not going to feel like, oh no, we didn't get through the last 5 things, because, you know, I wouldn't feel like that. And so,
how are we doing for the agenda items? Is there a few things that more things that we can knock down? I think it's good that you gave a chronology of how the group came about from the conference and forward from there. And I was involved in the first few meetings, and there were usually just a few people. So it does make sense that we've gotten into a bit of more organizational conversation now that we have a little bit more of a populated group. But is there more agenda items, a few more that we can knock down before we run out of time?
Well, we could, but if we're going to try to stick to 1.5 hours, we've passed that already. So are we going to keep going, or?
How do we make the decision?
I don't know where we are in the list. Are we?
Maybe you should make the decision just because you're in charge, Jessica.
Well, we have, one thing was about something that Silesh said, but he's not in here. And the next one were Jackie. And then the next one, and she's not here. So,
can I say something about Jackie's? Really?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That to me, the Adult Education Task Force and Jackie saying that she wants to get something that she can implement now, to me, that indicates maybe this is a task force, not just a study group, or, you know, that we are trying to do things too. And that also knocks off those 2 agenda items. So that's it.
That's a good point. And I have seen instances in other groups where like a activity gets inertia and starts to become proactive. There's still a lot to study in the normalizing vegan food task force, but it's the universal meal option was something that we started to take action on. It is a task force, but that was kind of an arbitrarily chosen name because it was a new group that probably should be a study group, and it approved to move to the next level by the Collective Vegan Intelligence Group. But that's a good point, that there's going to be a lot of different initiatives that allow us to start doing things while we still earn that next level kind of assignments.
Yeah, like I think one thing that I think we were going to talk more about was the like having play sessions, or like the school that Jackie wanted to have. I think she maybe possibly wanted to start with having some sort of like a place and a time to be able to invite families in and maybe have some sort of play session. And so that if she wanted to, she could call the Avenue play session or whatever kind of thing she wanted. And maybe she didn't want to do that, but we kind of talked about that in one meeting where it was Silas and Jackie and me. But in my mind, this is a study group, even though some of the things can be implemented now, because I feel like there's a whole lot to, like, sure, we can say the Avenue method, and people who have never heard of nonviolent communication or of attachment parenting, if they look up, just the definition, they'll be like, yeah, that sounds good. But there's, so many, how many, there's so much information about all of these things to me, and we're not going to like rewrite the books or like say, well, everybody needs to know everything in all the books or whatever, but just we can go more in depth, of course, than we already have. So to me, it is still a study group, even though we can go ahead and use some of the things and they can be implemented. And as far as like the Normalizing Vegan Food Task Force, to me, in my mind, I know it's called a task force, but in my mind, that's like a study group, even though we're starting to do some of the things, because I feel like we've been figuring out things in that one. You know what I mean?
There's lots to learn about education. So let's chat in the chat box. We need an adult education task force. That was the item?
Yeah, that was the next one. And so, but since he's not here, I was just going to
ask. And do we
him,
want to table a few things for when Silas comes back? Because he can also answer that question that we had earlier about the Sacred Lifeline project, whether there was any sort of thought put into education and how that would work in this model community. And part of that project's goal was to be a model community that they could try out new ideas and share them with the world. And that project doesn't exist, but it still, kind of exists as an idea. And so it may be worthwhile to get a few of those items into the next agenda for our next meeting.
Yeah, I would just save them. That's what I would just do. And then the last one was, and I would like to save this one too until at least all of our usual people are included too. But I was going to ask if everyone agrees that nonviolent communication would be fundamental to our Vegan World 2026 efforts. So, we can talk about that or wait. But if we talk about it now, we're going to talk about it again because all of our usual people aren't here. And there may be more who will join.
Okay, so we did get through our agenda. Is there any threads from earlier that we'd like to pick up?
Well, so just looking at the chat, Patricia needs to go soon. We need to go soon too. I know we're at the end of the agenda. Jorge, I accidentally skipped over you in the chat, and because I saw Jessica's name come up, do you have anything to add?
I just appreciating the opportunity to see the potential of creating a culture and going through all of this that doesn't belong in the 2026. Like, this is such a learning. And thank you all, because we're coming out of a system into the unknown. And we're trying to figure it out. And thank you so much for showing up and creating this learning experience.
Incidentally, there's only seven questions that were from the conference that were put into the this group's message board. and some of them are, you know, a little bit doubtful. I sorted them based on key terms like how do we teach, how do we involve the education system. So some of the questions are redundant, and some of them maybe belong in another group, and that's fine. You can actually shift questions to other groups, play hot potato, and say, here you go, whichever group. There's a share button that in the menu that allows you to shift them somewhere else. And there's also the possibility of answering the question according to this group and then sending it off to somebody else to get a, you know, you might even get some sort of counterpoint going with another group with a slightly different perspective.
Yeah. So we need to go through the questions and find out who we are and what is our work. Figuring out these basic things will give us so much clarity on what we're doing.
Yeah,
so,
in a perfect world, this would have been something that the people that attended the conference, all the questions would be put here, and they are the ones that ask these questions, and then they would be able to pick them up if they didn't show up, and if they're not part of the conversation. That's too bad for them. We can come up with our own.
I really appreciate the path behind us and what people brought in. And now it's time to tweak it. And maybe we can continue this conversation. We must continue this conversation, but maybe when we're fresh and more focused and with a little bit more of structure, if that helps somehow. And I would like to also honor my need to go and pee on potable water. And thank you again. Thank you so much. And would love to meet again in 2 weeks, like we agreed on, at the same time, and maybe ping pong the agenda for next time.
And I'd like to challenge people to try to find other people to join the group, not only the people that are in Basecamp, but people that you know have a heart for education and a heart for parenting and have something to share. And all of Basecamp is a collection of volunteers. So there's only so much energy people have to apply, and they should be able to give as much as they're willing to give without any pressure of expecting more. So at least until there's those initiatives that where they're required a little bit of follow through, but that's something for the group managers to handle, to assign, to motivate.
Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed this meeting. Look forward to the next one in 2 weeks. I know I'm still learning about sociocracy, nonviolent communication, unschool. I'm still learning about all this, and I agree it's a study group with tasks, and we'll figure it out, and we are figuring it out. So thank you all. Patricia, I know you maybe had some final thoughts too before we left?
I just feel really sad. I feel really triggered. A lot of things are coming up within me, and I'm not sure if I'll be part of this group. I just have to let things settle. But I'm very glad I was here, and I'm glad to meet everybody.
I'm glad you're here too, Patricia. I really appreciated when you were describing your experience with education. That's a very unique perspective, and that's a lot of what I'm talking about. When I say study, I really mean sharing ideas and collecting our experiences, and not only what we've experienced, what we would feel to be a lot better. That there are many better methods. Like I said, I'm a product of the public school system, and my parents are part of the public school system, so we know that there's so much damage that's done with those kinds of institutions, and we have so much potential to change that, and our objectives are within the next 6 years, so it is pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everyone, and sharing, and see you on the 31st.
See you in 2 weeks. And of course, the base camp is open for anybody to include discussions and post things in the campfire of things that are happening in the news. And there's always the possibility of saying, hey, something's come up that we got to discuss. Let's call a meeting. And just you can ping people in the group, individuals, or you can write things in the campfire and raise the flag.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
very much.
everybody.
Thank you all. Patricia, it was nice to meet you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.